The fight for Bakhmut seems to have stalled, and Ukrainian forces are barely holding out on the town, which is anchored on the front line in Luhansk Oblast in eastern Ukraine's Donbass region. The 10-month battle for Bakhmut, which has involved tens of thousands of Russian regular troops and Wagner Group mercenaries and similar numbers of Ukrainian active and territorial forces, may have culminated just days after the first anniversary of Russia's wider war in Ukraine. The fighting was particularly fierce around the settlement of Kremov, just northwest of Bakhmut, and was costly for both sides. Russian rockets and artillery disabled several Ukrainian vehicles that made the treacherous journey along 506 and across the armored bridge to Bakhmut. Ukrainian losses included a rare BTR-4E and a uniquely modified 93rd Brigade T-80 tank. Tragically, the crew of the famous T-80 was reported killed in an attack on their tank. The Ukrainians in turn killed a dozen Russians, or hundreds even. Blow them up with artillery and tank fire. Send drones to drop grenades on their combat positions. On Wednesday, the 93rd Brigade missile team shot down a Russian Su-25 attack jet that was likely being flown by Wagner Group mercenaries. The General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported on March 16 that Russia had lost 162,560 soldiers in Ukraine since the start of the invasion. This number includes the 1,040 casualties that Russian forces have suffered over the past few days. Both sides were running low on ammunition, heavy equipment, and skilled troops. But Russia appears to be running lower. The loss of manpower, artillery, and equipment in the battle for Bakhmut will likely limit Wagner's ability to complete the encirclement near Bakhmut, ASDU reported. What happens next depends on what reserves both sides can mobilize. The Russian army recently moved the 2nd Motor Rifle Division, part of the once elite 1st Guards Tank Army, into a forest 25 miles north of Bakhmut. The past few days, the Russian offensive on the city of Vuledar in eastern Ukraine has lost pace. It was one of a series of failed Russian attacks in the last 3 months with heavy losses. Russia's setback was partly due to the successful deployment of a Ukrainian system known as the Long-Range Anti-Armor Mine System, RAM. It can reportedly deploy anti-tank mines up to 17 kilometers, about 10.5 miles, from the launch point. The ministry emphasized that Russia's only notable recent tactical success was in the Bakhmut sector, which is dominated by the Wagner Group mercenary force currently engaged in a public feud with the Russian Ministry of Defense. The report says there is a real possibility that the Russian Defense Ministry itself has insisted on success at Vuledar, in part because it wants its own success to compete with Wagner's. In early March, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces stated that Russian military casualties exceeded 150,000. Meanwhile, some reports suggest that Ukrainian military casualties are in excess of 100,000. However, it is likely that the actual number of Russian and Ukrainian combat losses is far less. The heavy use of artillery was one of the main factors contributing to the increase in numbers in the Russo-Ukrainian War. The doctrines of both militaries revolved around artillery, and they preferred to engage their enemies from several kilometers away. These engagements are often inaccurate, and it is difficult for units to judge whether they are on target. It is important to note that artillery usually targets enemy artillery and armored vehicles. Meanwhile, a fighter of the armed forces of Ukraine in the direction of Donetsk destroys a moving Russian T-72 invader tank with its crew, with an American-made Javelin anti-tank missile system. The sniper operator of a unit of the Special Operations Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine in the Bakhmut direction at night also killed 4 Russian invaders and wounded 3. The press service of the SSO Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported this on its official Facebook page. A soldier from Ukraine's 93rd Mechanized Brigade destroyed the Russian Su-25 jet over Bakhmut, according to a commander. The announcement came after the head of the Ukrainian presidential office, Andriy Yermak, also said troops of the 93rd Mechanized Brigade had shot down a Russian military plane near Bakhmut. Commander Oleksandr Syrsky of the ground forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces said the Russian military continued to try to encircle the town and advance without success. Meanwhile, in a newspaper interview, two of the arrested Wagner conscripts told the Wall Street Journal that before they were sent to the front, they received little training other than learning to crawl through the woods in the dark. After 6 months of serving at the front, they were released on the condition that they survive. Conditions along the 600-mile eastern front began to change. Three Storms chalky hilltop hideaway feels like dry land compared to its surroundings. Early spring had turned the harsh winter ground into a muddy mush that might have benefited the defenders. 2 nights earlier, the 28th Brigade came under fire from Russian infantry and tanks. In a wooden gun position underground, cold rain drips through the roof onto the dirt floor, and there, peering into the empty landscape, is a belt-fed Maxim machine gun with sturdy iron wheels. It only works when there's a massive attack going on. Then it really works, Bori said. So we use it every week. And so the battle for Bakhmut unfolds, as winter turns to spring in 21st century Europe. A British official said in a speech in Vienna on March 15 that Russian military leaders had sacrificed military units and squandered strategic resources for little tactical advantage. The British estimated that over 800 Russian personnel were killed or wounded for every kilometer covered, most of them Wagner fighters. After this, Wagner Group owner Yevgeny Prigozhin found it more and more difficult to resupply what he called meat grinders in eastern Ukraine. In addition to human casualties, Russia has suffered colossal heavy armor losses. Since the summer of 2022, around 800 ancient T-62s have been removed from storage. Recently, Russian BTR-50 armored personnel carriers have also been deployed in Ukraine.